They always ignored me and belittled me, but no one imagined how I would change my life. I never thought a simple family party would be the trigger for me to finally see who I truly was, and who I never wanted to be again. It was my brother Felipe's wedding. Since childhood, he'd always been the center of everything. The sweetheart, the funny one, the sporty one, the pride of the house. Me, the studious one, the discreet one, the one who didn't give anyone any trouble. I grew up hearing that his brilliance needed space, and that I should be more simple so as not to bother anyone. I accepted it, until one day, the discomfort turned to anger. A silent anger, accumulated every time my mother said that a girl who's too pretty attracts the wrong attention, or when my father asked me to not overdo it with my outfit. Deep down, I just wanted to exist with a bit of dignity. My name is Isabella. I'm 27 years old, and for a long time, I felt invisible within my own family. I have a degree in business administration, work at a consulting firm, and have lived alone for almost 2 years. My transformation began after eye surgery, something I put off out of fear and lack of support. It was the first time I made a decision for myself. After that, I changed my hair, started taking care of my body, and for the first time, I looked at myself in the mirror with pride. But what should have been a source of joy became a source of conflict. With each change, I felt their discomfort increase. When my brother announced his marriage to Daniela, I thought it would be a moment of unity, but that's when everything fell apart. Daniela has always been the kind of person who needs to be the center of attention. Pretty, blonde, friendly, but always watching me with a look that mixed competition and insecurity. At first, I tried to ignore it. I convinced myself it was all in my head, but I soon realized it wasn't. When she started commenting to my mother that I was too changed and just wanting to show off, I saw the old cycle begin again. And this time, I wasn't willing to back down. The hints began subtly during the wedding preparations. "Isa, maybe a more neutral dress would look better," Daniela would say in that sweet, venomous tone. My mother would agree, my father would look away, and Felipe, as always, would pretend not to notice. I'd sit there, swallowing hard, trying to understand what was wrong with wanting to feel beautiful. Eventually, Daniela suggested, in front of everyone, that I avoid drawing too much attention during the ceremony. I remember the awkward silence and the heat rising in my face. I wanted to disappear, but at the same time, something inside me screamed that I couldn't take it lying down any longer. The week before the wedding, my mother called me in to talk. She said Daniela was nervous, and that I should give in for the sake of the family's peace. Those words stabbed me like a knife. I was always the one who had to give in. I was always the one who had to be understanding. I remember closing my bedroom door and crying until I couldn't breathe. That's when it hit me. I'd spent years trying to be accepted, trying to deserve love from those who only knew how to belittle me. And I realized that the problem wasn't that I wanted to be seen, it was that they couldn't stand it. On the wedding day, I woke up with a heavy heart. I tried to convince myself it would just be another event, that I just had to keep smiling and everything would pass quickly. But when I put on my dress, simple, blue, nothing flashy, I felt something different. It was as if, for the first time, I was there completely, hiding nothing. I arrived at the ceremony and noticed the stares, some of admiration, others of judgment. Daniela saw me and froze for a second. I saw the discomfort in her eyes. It was as if my confidence threatened the role she wanted to play, that of the perfect woman, admired, above everything and everyone. And me, I just wanted to exist without having to apologize for it. During the party, I noticed the tense atmosphere. Daniela avoided talking to me, and when she approached, she made comments disguised as compliments. "You look beautiful, Isabella. I almost didn't recognize you. You've changed so much, haven't you?" The almost was laced with venom. Felipe, completely oblivious, laughed and greeted everyone, while my mother watched me with that worried look, as if I were the threat. It ate away at me. I tried to enjoy myself, dance, chat with my cousins, but with every smile I gave, I felt the weight of crossing an invisible limit they had imposed on me since I was a child. At the end of the night, Daniela took me aside. She was irritated, her smile forced. She said I had stolen the spotlight, that some people had complimented my appearance more than hers. I was speechless. I laughed nervously and asked if she was serious. She replied, "It's not just about today, Isabella. You've changed and you don't look like yourself anymore. Everyone's talking about it." Those words hit me like a punch. For the first time, I clearly understood what she and my family wanted from me. For me to shrink myself to fit into the space they decided I should occupy. I left the party early. I got in my car and cried like I hadn't cried in a long time. It wasn't sadness, it was exhaustion. A deep tiredness of trying to fit into molds that suffocated me. When I got home, I took off my dress and stood in front of the mirror. I looked at myself and thought, why am I still trying to prove anything to them? In that moment, I understood that what I called a close-knit family was actually a system of control. I was afraid to walk away, afraid of being called ungrateful, but even more afraid of continuing to live like this. It was at that point that anger turned into strength. In the following days, I began to withdraw. I stopped responding to my mother's messages about reconciliation, stopped answering Felipe's calls, and focused on myself. I returned to therapy, something I'd abandoned when I was told it was nonsense. At work, I began dedicating myself to a project I'd always wanted to pursue alone. I still cried, still hurt, but for the first time, the pain was accompanied by clarity. I understood that loving yourself sometimes means disappointing those who never understood you. It was difficult, but also liberating. My family's reaction to my withdrawal was predictable. My mother began, with guilt-ridden messages, "You're hurting your brother. Daniela is very upset. You need to learn to be more empathetic." I read everything and felt the old lump in my throat, that urge to apologize for existing. But this time, I resisted. I wasn't going to apologize for taking care of myself anymore. When she realized I wouldn't give in, she began to ignore me completely. Total silence. My father followed suit, and deep down, it hurt. It still hurts. The feeling of being excluded for no longer accepting the role of an extra in your own life is brutal. But even so, I remained steadfast. Those were difficult weeks. Loneliness hit hard, especially on Sundays, when I knew they were together. I saw photos on social media, laughter, dinners, and that perfect image my family always maintained. I wasn't there, and it tore me apart. There were days when I almost texted, asking to talk, but something inside me told me to wait. I needed to learn to be alone without feeling wrong about it. And little by little, I discovered a peace I'd never experienced before. Silent, simple, but true. It was the beginning of my rebuilding, even if I still stumbled from time to time. One day, I received an unexpected call. It was Fred, Felipe's best friend. He was always kind to me, but he kept his distance out of respect for his friendship with my brother. This time, his voice sounded different. He said he needed to tell me something, that he couldn't stand the way they treated me anymore. We arranged to meet at a cafe. I remember the feeling of being about to hear something I already knew but didn't want to admit. And that was exactly it. Fred told me that Daniela was always making comments about me, my appearance, and even my body, as if I were a constant threat. He also said that she manipulated Felipe, feeding his insecurities to keep him dependent. I listened in silence, feeling my stomach churn. When I got home after that conversation, I cried again, but it wasn't the cry of a victim anymore. It was one of liberation. It was the pain of someone who finally understands what they were going through and decides to stop accepting it. I wasn't the problem. I was the mirror that reflected their weaknesses. And somehow, I realized that this had always bothered them. I started writing about what I felt, short texts, anonymous rants on forums and blogs, and to my surprise, other women began responding. They said they saw themselves in me, that they too had been silenced within their own homes. There, I found a new kind of belonging, that of people who have learned to rebuild themselves on their own. That exchange changed everything. I realized my pain could have purpose. I started getting involved with support groups, participating in online meetings about self-esteem and family boundaries. And little by little, I grew stronger. I learned to set boundaries without yelling, to say no without feeling guilty. Until one day my mother called, and this time, I answered. She said she wanted to see me, that she missed me. We arranged to meet for coffee. I went with my heart racing, but with a calm I had never felt before. I knew that this time the conversation would be different. When I arrived at the cafe, my mother was already there. Her posture was the same as always, well-groomed, serious, trying to appear in control. But her gaze was different. There was weariness, perhaps regret. We sat down, and silence was the first guest. I waited for her to speak. After a few minutes, she said things had gotten out of control, and that she didn't want to lose her daughter. That her daughter struck me deeply. I wanted to believe her, but there was still a part of me on edge. She tried to justify what happened, saying Daniela was fragile, and that Felipe was letting herself be influenced. I heard it all, but this time I didn't buy it. I calmly said that what hurt most wasn't what Daniela did, but what they allowed to happen. She remained silent. It was the first time I saw my mother unresponsive. I left that cafe feeling light. For the first time, I didn't need to justify myself. I'd spoken firmly without losing my cool. I felt proud. It was as if I'd reclaimed a part of myself that had been trapped for years in attempts to please. When I got home, I sat on the couch and took a deep breath. It wasn't the end of the pain, but the beginning of a new phase. I knew there would still be setbacks, that my family might never see me the way I wanted, but that was okay. The difference was that now I saw myself, and that changed everything. Over time, I began to understand that self-esteem isn't a destination, it's a daily exercise. There were days when I looked in the mirror and felt powerful, and others when I doubted everything. But even in my doubts, there was a new certainty. I would no longer shrink to fit into the comfort of others. I learned to praise myself without guilt, to celebrate small victories. I took a solo trip, something I'd always dreamed of. I walked along the beach at dawn, listening to the sound of the sea and thinking about how freedom smells of salt and wind. A few months later, I received a message from Felipe. He said he was going through a difficult time, that things with Daniela weren't going well. I didn't celebrate or wish him ill, but I understood. When you're constantly trying to please someone who needs to put you down to feel good, the price comes due. He asked to talk, and I accepted. We met in a park. He seemed different, tired, regretful. He said he now understood what I felt, that Daniela controlled him in subtle ways, that he'd lost himself trying to keep everything perfect. I listened, and although there was still hurt, I could empathize. Sometimes pain is the only way to see what we've denied for so long. After that conversation, something inside me settled. It wasn't immediate forgiveness, but a beginning. I saw in my brother the reflection of the same fear that had paralyzed me before, the fear of disappointment, of rejection. Deep down, we were victims of the same system, except I managed to get out first. We started talking again cautiously, without forcing intimacy, and surprisingly, we began to rebuild a different, more honest relationship. I didn't expect this, but I learned that sometimes life returns people to us in a different way, when we learn to choose ourselves first. Daniela, in turn, ended up distancing herself from everyone. Felipe and she fought constantly, and their marriage was in crisis. I didn't feel joy about it, only relief. Relief at finally no longer having to carry the burden of pleasing someone who only knew how to belittle me. I realized that her obsession with controlling my life only reinforced what I needed: clear boundaries. I could choose my clothes, my appearance, my schedule, my life. For the first time, I realized how powerful it is to free yourself from expectations that were never yours. And it didn't happen overnight, but each step was necessary for me to feel whole. I started to value my space, my friends, and my hobbies. I started writing again, running in the park, and taking care of myself without needing anyone's approval. Every time I looked in the mirror, I remembered the tears of the past and smiled. It wasn't about being beautiful, it was about being mine. I discovered that self-esteem isn't just about feeling good about yourself. It's also about taking a stand, speaking your mind, and rejecting what diminishes you. I learned to listen less to empty criticism and more to my own voice. And that voice, which for years was stifled, now guides me. I also began to create bonds outside my family that truly valued me. Friendships that don't compete, that celebrate achievements without envy. People who accept me whole, with my past, weaknesses, and victories. It was in this environment that I realized how much my old fear of confrontation limited me. Today, when someone tries to control me, I feel an instant alert. I've learned to walk away before the manipulation takes effect. It's not always easy, and I still have days of insecurity, but the difference is that now I have tools and awareness. The process of overcoming grief taught me that pain can be fuel. Every tear, every feeling of rejection, every critical look I endured became energy to rebuild myself. Today, I can look back and see that everything I experienced prepared me for this emotional freedom. I didn't become indifferent to my family, but I learned to set clear boundaries. I learned that I don't need to wait for anyone's recognition to feel worthy, that self-love doesn't require other people's approval, that being happy, above all, is an act of daily courage. If I could speak to anyone going through something similar, I would say, don't blame yourself for walking away. Don't minimize yourself to fit into the comfort of someone who never valued you. There is a strength within you that can rebuild everything, even if the pain still hurts. And little by little, it will transform into pride, lightness, and freedom. I still deal with the hurt, but it doesn't define me. Today, I know I can be seen, heard, and loved, starting with myself. This is my victory, and I hope it inspires those who feel like there's no way out. There is a way, even through tears.